Morning, all. And I want to take a look at the Pacific Division right now. Where the Pacific Division's at. And yeah, everybody has 57 or 58 points. How obnoxious if the Canucks have 58 when everybody else agreed to have 57 at the break. So I went with alphabetical order on this because we're looking at the trade deadline. So I thought, I'm not going to do the standings wise. I'm just going to go through alphabetically. So we'll start with Anaheim. Anaheim's at 19, 24, and 5. They have 43 points. They're not making the playoffs. We know this. That being said, their goals for currently sits at 30th in the NHL. This is goals for per game. Their goals against is 20th. So they kind of need a little bit of everything. But since they're not going to say rebuilding, since they're retooling, and there are a lot of young kids in this on this roster, there will be some players likely available. So let's look at it. Nicholas Deslauriers, he will garner some interest if they make him available. He is as close to an enforcer as you get in the NHL right now. Toronto might want to grab Deslauriers. He's not an overly expensive player. Works really hard. He's willing to drop the gloves. So, yeah, Deslauriers is one that stands out to me. And Derek Grant, who already has 10 goals this year. It's been hot and cold, but to make him available at the deadline, I would think that he may very well be a popular target. That being said, and I mean popular because he's a relatively easily priced, not like a $3, $4, $5 million a year contract, right? So you don't have to worry about cap space too much to bring him in. And with so many teams cap strapped, these guys could be more popular than they would be in other years. But the one thing with Grant is, if I'm the Ducks general manager right now, he's one of the forwards I want to keep. He's one of the forwards I think is worth keeping going forward. There's Holzer and Delzato on the blue line. I would figure that one or the other or both are gone by the deadline. Holzer's actually had a decent season. Delzato, he's a number 6 or number 7 defenseman. And I would think that he probably moves at the deadline like he did last year. And Ryan Miller. I don't know with Miller if there's a lot of market value for him, but he's one of the few expiring contract goaltenders who has a resume strong enough that somebody might take a flyer on him. Maybe. That being said, Anaheim doesn't really have to move Miller. I mean, it would suck if he retires at the end of the season. They don't get anything back for him. But I don't think he has a large market value anyways. Restricted free agents, Larson is there. He hasn't taken that step this year that one might have expected, so I don't think he'll get a big raise. And Devon Shore, who to me, with RFA rules where you have to qualify a guy at a certain number, Shore to me seems like the kind of guy who may not get qualified and may end up being an unrestricted free agent this summer. We saw that plenty last year. I would imagine we'll see that again this summer. So yeah, they'll be active. They kind of need to fix everything. Arizona, 26, 20, and 5 is their overall record, 57 points. Goals for, they're 22nd in the league, so they will be in the market, I would think, for more scoring. Goals against is 4th. Now, that more scoring, if Phil Kessel starts to score the way we know he can, that will help to fix the problem right there. But still being 22nd overall in goals for per game is an issue. 2020 UFAs. Soderberg is up. And it's a matter of, are they going to keep him? Are they not going to keep him? I would think that with the way he's played this year, they'll want to keep him. They won't want to keep him on a huge cap hit, but I would imagine he sticks around. Taylor Hall, we'll see what happens with Hall. Odds are he doesn't sign an extension before trade deadline. Brad Richardson is up this summer. 34 years of age. May very well be on his way out of the league, or if he decides to stick around, that'll likely be in Arizona. I can't see him moving on from Arizona. I could see him taking a pay cut to stay in Arizona. Restricted free agents, you got Vinny Hinostroza, who's having kind of a down year this year, so that's not going to lead to him getting a huge bump in his salary. Christian Fischer and Ilya Lyubushkin. So there's nobody on the restricted free agent horizon for Arizona right now that they have anything to worry about. John Chayka has done a good job of building a team. He doesn't really have to worry about signing a bunch of guys, and he got most guys signed to long-term contracts. So I guess what I'm saying with Arizona is that if they can add a forward, they might, but with where they're at towards the salary cap, they're right up near the limit. Unless they move money out, there's not a whole lot of... I mean, unless they moved Soderberg, but that'd be kind of crazy because they need scoring, and Soderberg's been good, so Arizona might be good. Calgary, they're 26, 19, and 5. So they have one less regulation loss than Arizona. These teams are really close in record, 57 points. Goals for, Calgary's been a very disappointing 25th with almost the same roster that last year was one of the top scoring teams in the league. And before people say, well, yeah, but they had James Neal. James Neal had nothing to do with their scoring last year for the most part, so it's weird. Goals against, they're at 12th. So they're middling defensively, goaltending wise, and their forwards, they do need to pick up some help. Now, they're unrestricted free agents. There's not really anything to say up front. They've got Reeder and Ronaldo. If they decide they want to keep those guys, they can keep them on the cheap. The blue line is interesting. That's where we still have Brody and Hamonic as unrestricted free agents to be. I would think Hamonic goes. Now, I don't know when, but I would think Hamonic likely gets moved, probably for help up front. Stone is an interesting one in that they bought him out and they brought him back. I don't know if they move him at the deadline. I don't know that they get a whole lot back for him if they do. And Talbot is an interesting one because he's outplayed Riddick at times this year. So are you going to keep Talbot around or are you going to move in another direction next season? On the restricted free agents front, Jankowski has not played the kind of season this year that I think he would have desired to, looking at restricted free agency this coming summer. He'll end up taking whatever offer they give him. He's another one as well that I could see a team saying, we won't qualify him, we'll let him go as a UFA. Mangiapane has played well, and I would expect he sticks around with the Flames. And Shillington has been good. And with Brody and Hamonic, one or the other likely being moved on from, that would basically move Shillington up the list of defensemen, which is probably the plan anyways. Rasmus Anderson's been given a greater role this year, and I would think there's more youngsters coming into their blue line. And, Calgary, you don't want to overcorrect. Like, you don't want to move out a big name just for the sake of moving out a big name. So when you hear this Johnny Gaudreau talk, I don't see how you trade Johnny Gaudreau. I just don't. So I don't think Johnny Gaudreau's going anywhere. That being said, I do think that they need to add something up front, and they likely use one of their blue liners in order to make that happen. Edmonton, 26, 18, and 5. 18 and 5. So they have one less regulation loss than Calgary, two less regulation losses than the Arizona Coyotes, pretty darn near the exact same record. Their goals for, they're 12th, so actually they're outscoring all three teams I already mentioned. Goals against, they're 19th, which means defensively they're down with the Ducks. So that's where there's an issue, and that's what we would talk about anyways with Edmonton is, well, they got to work on their blue line and probably get a winger or two. That being said, Kyler Yamamoto coming up and playing the way he has kind of cut off their need for a winger. Yamamoto right now is doing what Puljujarvi was supposed to do last year and was envisioned to do this year, but of course he didn't come to camp and he wants to get traded. 2020, unrestricted free agents. Now I don't have Puljujarvi on the board because he's not on the roster. Puljujarvi gets moved, great. He's not playing this year anyways. If they don't move him, it's not really all that harmful. They can move him this summer. And I would think that you'd be better off and get a bigger haul for him this summer than you're going to get for him at the deadline. Since, again, he can't help a team out if you trade him there anyways. 2020 UFAs. Gagne is UFA this summer. Cassian is UFA this summer. Of course, he is supposed to sign an extension. Likely will today now that I've got him on this board. Archibald has been interesting in that he's been very good for Edmonton. I would think that if I were Ken Holland, I'd be talking to him about an extension. And, of course, that's where people get nervous because we know the extensions he was signing in Detroit. It's like, don't get overly generous with these guys. 57 points is impressive. They've done really well. But don't get too generous here, Ken. Haas, Nygaard, these are guys who are depth players, likely stick around, probably don't get a big raise. If Shan wants to stick around, it's likely he will unless they look to upgrade that position in the offseason. And Mike Smith. So Smith and Talbot are both UFAs this summer. We'll see if they switch back or they go somewhere else in the division or what happens. But Smith has been very good for Edmonton, and I would think that there's some interest in extending him for at least one more season. I was reading a report. I don't remember which site it was on. I know it was either TSN or Sportsnet. Actually, it could have been Hockey News. They were talking about goaltending, and just casually mentioning, well, Smith's old and Koskinen's not very good. And I thought, okay, well, whoever wrote this hasn't watched the Oilers this year. Smith's not playing like he's old. And he's playing like he has at least another year of being a half-decent goaltender, at least a 1B option. Their goaltending really hasn't been the problem this year. It really hasn't. The blue line on some level, yes, but their goaltending has been pretty darn good. It's funny how a goaltender 1 month, Koskinen, can be praised for, he worked in the offseason, he's gotten better, and then he has a few bad games, and they go, well, he's not very good. That's it. Goaltenders, right? It's right up there with kickers in the NFL as a job that you're as good as your last game. So I feel bad for goalies if they read any of the media reports. They'll tell you they don't, but I think a lot of them do. Kings are 18, 27, and 5. They have 41 points. They're not going into the playoffs. Their goals for is at 29th. Their goals against is at 21st. So they kind of need to sort of fix everything. Now, not on the board is Jonathan Quick. So a question mark that we all have is, okay, so you've got Quick, you've got Peterson, and you've got Campbell. Peterson requires waivers to go down next season. And Peterson likely is kind of tired of playing in the American League, and all that's fun, but he wants a shot at an NHL job. So, it's highly likely that Quick's going to be on the market this coming summer. Is he going to be on the market right now? Maybe. I'm sure if you called the Kings and said, hey, we're willing to take Jonathan Quick's contract, they'd be foolish not to at least listen to what you're offering. Now, they're unrestricted free agents this summer. Toffoli, who of course is being talked about a ton in terms of his potential to bring back a large haul because he's one of the few 20 goal scorers available. Trevor Lewis, if you're looking for a cheaper option, he makes $2 million. And I would think that would be a better option for some teams at the deadline who might be just looking for forward depth. And Kyle Clifford. So Toronto, if you need some toughness up front, you could probably get Delorier and Clifford. That could both get you into the playoffs and make you a tough team to play in the playoffs. Kyle Clifford as well can chip in a little bit of offense here and there too. So it's not like you're sacrificing a tremendous amount of offense to get him in there. So Forbert on the blue line, I think, could be a target. Forbert hasn't been talked about a lot. Hutton hasn't been talked about a lot either. Ben Hutton's a depth guy. And I actually think that of the defensemen that they have, he may have some interest in staying in LA, and LA may have some interest in keeping him because he's not going to take a bunch of money to do it. And then on the restricted free agent front, you've got Prohorkin, who's been pretty good when he's been in the lineup for LA. Wagner, who is definitely deserving of sticking around. And Sean Walker. Walker could very well get a pretty decent bump this summer, unless they sit down with him between now and July and actually work out an extension with him. I like Walker a lot. I think there's a lot of potential with him. So LA is going to be interesting because there are some names there that could be worth something. Forbert, as long as he can show he can still play, he's had injury problems, but as long as he looks healthy going into the deadline, I think things are going to be okay for him, and likely the Kings get something back for him. The caveat, of course, is they may very well want to keep Forbert, especially his cap hit isn't really all that high. So LA is going to be interesting to watch. San Jose, 21, 25, and 4, surprisingly at 46 points. The biggest surprise with them is their offense and their defense. Goals for, goals against. They're 28th in the NHL at both. They can't score and they can't keep the puck out of the net. Somewhere Detroit Red Wings went, is he talking about us? Not right now. Not right now. We'll get to you guys. You're in another division. But San Jose is a huge surprise being here, honestly. Their UFAs this summer, I don't know that any of this necessarily helps a whole lot. Melker Karlsson's a UFA this summer. He makes $2 million a year. I don't know. I guess he can get traded, and I guess you might get back something for him. It's not going to be a ton. Joe Thornton, he's not going anywhere. Marlowe isn't going anywhere either. So Marlowe and Thornton likely move on this summer. And the problem is San Jose, bringing them back made sense because they didn't have the offensive depth. And I wonder what they're going to do this coming summer. Because, again, they don't have a ton of cap space in comparison with other teams. People will always say, oh, this team's got $12 million, this team's got $10 million. And then it's like, okay, but compare how much money they have compared to other teams, and their ability to fix things may very well be hampered by it. Dylan, Could attract some interest at the deadline. He is a physical defenseman. He can chip in here and there, and I think somebody will come a calling. I wouldn't be surprised actually if Boston made a phone call about Dylan for what he's able to do on the blue line. Heed and Shimmick are also restricted free agents. I would think Shimmick will stay. I'd be very surprised if Shimmick doesn't stay with San Jose. And Aaron Dell becomes a fascinating one because Dell has kind of taken that starter's job, right? And Dell's been pretty good. So do you extend Dell this summer based on how he's played this year? Or do you look at his overall body of work and go, he's a middling goaltender. We're likely going to look to upgrade this in the offseason so we can offload Dylan, or we can offload Dell. They'll offload Dylan as well. Offload Dell. Jones will start the lion's share of games. From here, we're not going to make the playoffs anyways. We'll see if we can fix whatever's going on with Martin Jones, and we'll see what we can get for Dell, right? And restricted free agent Kevin Labanc. Labanc, who took that deal that was a lot cheaper than a lot of us thought it would be, he will get a raise this summer. His goals have not been as plentiful this year as last year. This is why when you see these contracts, you go, oh, he should get way more than that. Well, back in the day, they would get those year-to-year contracts, and well, let's see if he can do it again. And he's not producing at the same level he did. So the long-term extension he was entitled to, now that price will actually likely come down a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. So it's an interesting argument to have another day. But San Jose does have some problems going forward, and that Erik Karlsson contract already looks like a large weight around their neck that's going to drag them down into the ocean. Which is good, because San Jose's right next to the ocean, so you can go out and look off up here and go, what's that down there? Oh, that's Erik Karlsson's contract. It's been weighing us down for a while. All right. Is that good for an earthquake? Nah, it's not that heavy. All right. Vancouver, 27-18-4. So when you look at this, and you say 58 points and they're first in the division, and Canucks fans are all excited. Okay, Canuck fans, go look over there for a few seconds. Just look in that. Look what's behind you. Okay. The Canucks actually are only one win ahead of the Oilers, and they've got one overtime loss less than the Oilers. Their record is virtually identical to Edmonton's, so really no difference. Okay, Canuck fans, you guys can watch now. Goals for, the Canucks are 10th, so there's not really any need for depth up front. I mean, they could look for it, but if Ferland comes back, we've got Sutter back now, so... and I know I say we've when I talk about the Canucks every now and then. It's a fault that I've had for the last 40 years. So I apologize for that. Goals against, 14th. So there's definitely some room there to improve. Middle of the pack probably doesn't get it done come playoff time. And if this team believes that they're playoff ready, Jim Benning likely thinks they are, and ownership probably is really hoping they are. They haven't had a playoff gate in 5 years. They'd like to have a playoff gate, and so we'll see what they do. 2020 unrestricted free agents. Canuck fans everywhere will celebrate when Tim Schaller's agreement comes to an end this summer, so his contract ends, and then they'll sign... who else is on the board here? They'll sign... There was somebody I was thinking of. Trevor Lewis, they'll give him $5 million a year or something like that. Anyway, so... we'll see what contract gets signed this summer to replace Schaller, right? Unless they do the smart thing and just bring in McEwen, but we'll see. McEwen is RFA. He's not on the board because he's not going to get a big raise. Tanev is an interesting one in that there's been rumors about Chris Tanev for years, and it was always from the point of view of selling him. Like, all right, well, we're just going to sell him because, he gets hurt all the time. Teams know that. Teams look at injured lists. And he's not really a part of the long-term future, so whatever. I actually think Tanev sticks around. I don't know how much they pay him. I would be surprised if he leaves. He's a heart and soul guy. I don't think he's going anywhere. Fantenberg's an interesting one in that he was sitting out for most of the first quarter of the season. And then once he gets into the lineup, you kind of can't take him out. He's been really good. So I would think there's going to be some interest both from the player and the team to make this work. And I think he sticks around. Markstrom, of course, is the interesting one. Markstrom could very well be exposed to the Seattle this coming summer, or 2021 summer. The thing is, the Canucks can make a deal then. Don't worry about it now. Sign Markstrom to an extension. Odds are there's going to be some pretty darn good goaltenders that are available. The assumption that they would want Markstrom, who's going to be, 30 at the time? probably not very good. Now, the thing is, of course, if you sign Markstrom and you keep him, that's telling Demko, by the way, you're going to be the backup for a while. So that's where things get really interesting, because then Demko might be like, well, if I'm not going to get a chance to start here, I might as well go somewhere else. And they may look at DiPietro and go, hey, we got another guy in our roster, in the system, who might be able to do what Demko's already doing. So we may be able to trade from a position of strength. Keep Markstrom, who's still young enough to stay in his prime for another 5 years, and, move on from Thatcher Demko, find him a place where he can start and see what happens. So, yeah, that'll be a fascinating turn of events. Josh Levo, UFA this coming summer. I would think he sticks around. I don't see them moving him. Restricted free agents is where things get interesting for the Canucks. Jake Virtanen is up this summer. How much is Virtanen worth? That's going to be an interesting negotiation. Adam Gaudette, who's kind of proven he's taken that next step this year. Offensively, depends on the night, but he looks pretty good out there. Tyler Mott probably earned himself another contract. He provides something on that fourth line that nobody else has. And Troy Stetcher, of course, is one that Canuck fans are looking at. I don't think he's going to get Ben Hutton. And Ben Hutton last year, it was in order to qualify him as a restricted free agent, it was too much money, and Jim Benning walked away. And it was the right decision. I don't think they do that with Stetcher this summer. We'll see how they are with the cap once we get into June. But I don't see any reason to think that Stetcher goes anywhere at the deadline. So for Vancouver, I really think we're going to see some status quo for the most part. If they can make an addition, I think they'll try to. I think the pressure is there for them to add somebody, but we'll see. Things may stay very status quo for the Canucks this year through the deadline. Vegas. So a lot of Vegas subscribers. We'll get into this. 25, 19, and 7 overall. 57 points. So really, really similar record to everybody who's not from California. So the California teams are all very similar, and anybody not in California is similar for good reasons. Now, for Vegas, they're 16th in goals for, and they're 15th in goals against. Scoring depth, I like their top six a lot. I think they could use another guy on, say, the third line who can put a couple of pucks in the net. And I think their blue line needs some help. Now, when you look at their unrestricted free agent list for this summer, it's kind of interesting. Cody Eakin. So Eakin's the guy that I've said, his contract's probably a little bit rich. And I think his totals this year have really made that look to be apparent. But at the same time, if they decide to keep him, let's say that McCrimmon and McPhee sit down and they go, all right, well, we don't need to move Eakin. They may very well say that because they may be able to keep him for less money. So next year's cap hit for Eakin could actually be lower. Ryan Reeves, same thing. Ryan Reeves may very well take less money to stay in Las Vegas. So, right there, you're saving some cap money. You may not have the pressure to move these guys. Nosek isn't going to get a large raise. No reason to move him. Holden, much the same. Merrill is where it gets interesting. Merrill, I think, could go. And I think they could be willing to move on from him. England, there's not going to be a large market for England. And England, just from a PR standpoint, they'll keep England local and all that. I don't see him going anywhere at the deadline. Garrett Sparks might be one that they look at moving because he's a number 3 goaltender. There are teams in the league who might look at picking up a number 3 goaltender at the deadline and might be willing to rent something out to Vegas in response. The thing is, it's not going to be somebody who really moves the needle enough. Restricted free agents. Chandler Stevenson is due this summer. William Carrier is due this summer. Nicholas Raw is due this summer. And Malcolm Subban is also due this summer. So those are 4 guys. None of them are going to get huge raises. Stevenson's played very well with Vegas, but does he get a huge raise? Probably not. So for Vegas, while they're cap strapped right now, they're going to need to move out Eakin completely if they're going to actually bring somebody in. That's where things get tricky. Eakin is honestly the easiest to move. And again, you'd have to find a landing spot. It might get uncomfortable. You might have to send him to Anaheim and give something up to Anaheim of worth to them in order to take Eakin's contract as a rental at the deadline. And then maybe Anaheim eats some of that and sends him somewhere else because they don't really have a need to rent Eakin either. So we'll see what happens. They may have to get creative. It may be a three-team deal. But I would think that if they're going to improve their blue line, and they need to, that Eakin may very well be the guy who gets sacrificed. Because I think Cody Glass has been groomed to take that spot at least temporarily. I think Glass ideally We'll be that number 3 center, move up to 2, and eventually, who knows, right? But I think he's being groomed to take that spot. So Vegas, I know the expectation is to win, and we'll see whether or not they can live up to that expectation this year, or if things are going to be a challenge for them again. These are very, very tightly bunched together. That's why I wanted to look at the Pacific first. And most of these teams aren't playing this week either, so it makes a lot of sense to look at this division. Let me know what you guys think. Who do you think is going to be the biggest mover? Which team do you think is going to be most active at the trade deadline? Of these 8 teams, I think Vegas will always be very active. And I think Calgary understands they need to fix that goals for. And I think they're going to make some moves to try to make that happen. There's definitely a feeling on this roster. I don't know, things are kind of stale, and they need to shake it up a little bit. Maybe there's some guys on this team who feel pretty safe with their jobs and aren't necessarily working as hard as they should be. I don't know. We'll see how things turn out. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And yes, I will do this for each division now that we're around the All-Star break and we're getting close to the trade deadline. So let me know your thoughts as always. I will talk to you again soon.